watch.
You're right. You're right. I was thinking of that. Tina, put your video on. We want to see you.
I don't wanna.
All right. You gotta be
All right,
like,
all right. I'll see if I can figure it out. What do I press? I don't know.
there's a little camera icon on the bottom, and it's got a line through it. And if you click on it, the line will go away.
Yeah,
Now
okay, okay.
reveal you in all your glory.
All right. I have to do this whole thing. That's okay. Just go ahead without me.
Now we're gonna give everybody a chance to get on.
Okay, I think I'm doing it like this. I don't know. I'll allow Zoom, yeah. Okay. Zoom will not access my thing, my video camera. I must have done something before. I'll keep trying. Are you there?
I'm here. Anka, how are you?
Huh?
I'm talking to Anka. Anka, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I got through the day.
That's the best you can.
We all did. We all did.
Every day you go through and you're on the correct side of the grass is a good day.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I don't live in Los Angeles.
Well, I don't know anything about Los Angeles, to tell you the truth.
It's a shitstorm over there now with the virus.
Yeah.
Already?
Oh.
Someone it's crying for help somewhere.
Oh.
You hear?
Oh, okay.
We have Erica in the house from Colorado.
Really? Cool.
We're going to have people from all over the country tonight.
Mm. Where's my beloved Rani?
Yeah.
She's probably putting on her face.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's essential. I agree. That's essential.
I love you.
You know, we have to disguise it at this age.
Bye, my sweetheart. Bye.
Oh, now we have the southern tier, and Maryland is here.
Oh, no. What'd you say?
You are in it.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I don't want to sit in the background. What is this about?
He's going to start reading the story about.
Right, we're
What?
gonna give everybody a chance to log on, and then in a few minutes we're gonna start. And the idea is we're going to do 3 pieces from my new collection of short stories, and then we'll have a chance if you want to ask questions or not.
Janet is here too.
As well.
This Janet. Wait a minute.
No, you're hilarious.
Hi, everybody. It's 8 o'clock. I'm Albert Levy from the Skyview board. We're doing the hosting today as far as the Zoom host. So I figure we'll give it till 8:05, and then we'll get started. So feel free to keep the chatting going.
Okay.
And at 8:05, I'll mute everybody except Marty, and I'll do a quick introduction and let him launch right into reading
Sophia
something.
was not
Why? She didn't say-
gallstones.
What was this?
Why did you come over here?
Who just told you that?
No, he pooped for me not that long ago.
I know her.
I'm all muted. Oh, there I am. Hi, Ronnie.
Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Good evening.
Ah,
Welcome.
thank you. Hi, Marty.
Hello.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Marty.
Hey, welcome.
Thank
Look what
you.
happened.
Come to see.
Oh my God, look. Florida's here.
Florida.
I'm in the house.
Florida.
Yeah, Florida's.
We're freezing here. Look, he's wearing a sweatshirt here.
Freezing. What is it, 70?
It's like 50-ish.
Poor
Where
baby.
in Florida are you?
Boynton Beach.
Oh, I'm in Boca.
Oh, we're almost neighbors.
Right. It must be 10 degrees warmer here then.
Yeah, right. A little south. You're a little south. You look like my southern neighbors.
Yes.
I don't mind it this way.
I love it.
Yeah.
Not
I don't know
hot
who's
enough.
talking to me. I can't tell.
I think the lady in. No,
Which
I-
lady? No,
no,
because
she's
I'm
on
on my phone. I'm not even on a computer. I'm on my phone, so I'm scrolling back and forth to see everyone.
Marty, I don't even recognize you.
Right, I don't know anybody. I'm not interested.
What changed? What could possibly have changed in a million years?
You look younger.
Oh, God bless you.
Hey, Marty. Just saying hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good.
I'm forgetting everything.
Say again?
I'm forgetting all of my block quotes.
There's a lot of people here. Look how many people
Yeah.
are here.
I
One
know.
of my friends might be coming on. Her name's Amy. I don't know if she is
Joe
though.
Carol Malka.
Professor, we're going to hold it for like 4 more minutes, and then at 8:05 we're going to go left off.
I'm not in a hurry at all.
Okay, good.
Just
How you doing?
bigger thing. Yeah, you know, hanging in there. Happy New Year and all that.
Hey, Marty, Happy New Year.
Gary.
It is Judith. Hi, Judith. Hi, Judith's iPad.
Can I just say that I'm one of the lucky ones to already have a copy?
No, I'm not muted.
Wow.
Judith's muted. Judith, I don't know if she's muted.
Yeah, that's why we're all here.
That's a good-looking jacket.
Yeah, I like it.
It's not bad. I got to go put it back up in the room where so I can have it up on my set there.
Absolutely.
Marty, did you find Mike?
No,
Frazier?
fell off the face of the earth. Last track was somewhere in California. And who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm in contact with Sal. Sal may be coming on later on tonight.
Oh, I'd love to see him. I'd love to see him. I don't know if he'd remember me though.
Probably. Marcy, you got to put more art on the wall.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, that's a closet.
Oh.
The art's over there, see?
Ah.
And the art's over here.
How many people are here?
The art's over here. But behind me's a closet.
Look at all the people here.
All right, guys. I'm
I'll leave these
gonna
for
now
anyway.
put everybody in the audience on mute, and I think we can get
Big
started.
turnout.
I'll ask that you please don't unmute yourselves until the question part. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So, guys, again, one more time, my name is Albert. We are very excited today to be hosting the book launch party Zoom reading for Marty Kleinman, who's our neighbor in 5800. He just published his second collection of short fiction. The book is called The Shoebox Full of Money. Marty, if you could show the people. You can see it's a lovely book. I actually had the opportunity to read some of the galley copies up ahead of everybody else before it was released, and I was very excited. And it's a very good book. A lot of wonderful stories. So Many of the stories were previously published in literary publications over the last few years. I'm going to read just a few of the many advanced praises for the book. So one best-selling author, Marion Fontana, wrote, "In a shoebox full of money, Kleinman's love of New York breathes on every page. He weaves complex urban themes with a poignant tenderness. With the humor of Fran Lebowitz and the pathos of Pete Hamill, Kleinman's stories feel quintessentially New York. No matter where the author's gorgeous writing goes, we know he will always land us smoothly in his beloved New York City." And I'll give you one more. This is from Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times photographer Angel Franco. "Reading Marty Kleinman's A Shoebox Full of Money is like slow dancing to a love song by La Lupe. His poignant stories are remembrances of life, love, and loss. As in his first effort, Homefront, this new collection digs into the mosaic of New York City life. He's a New York City storyteller, born and bred in New York. His fiction and essays have been published in anthologies and literary publications, as well as in the Huffington Post, as well as www.thisisthebronx.info, and on his own blog, www.therealnewyorkers.com. He's done readings in venues all around New York City, from KGB Bar to Sidewalk Cafe to Brooklyn's Union Hall, and now he's here for us. You could find more about his work at his website, martykleinman.com. And without further ado, I'll let Marty take it away and read us some stories.
Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. And especially, I'd like to give a nice shout out to the board of directors of Skyview on Hudson, who opened up this platform for us all. We're joined tonight by friends and associates from all around the country, may even have some from Europe if they're night birds. We'll be reading from Shoebox Full of Money. I'm going to be doing 3 selections. I like to think of my writing as sitting around the campfire. I imagine a scenario where eons ago, us humans were hunkered down in our caves, around fires, sharing experiences that touched the random nature of life. Bad stuff lurked right outside that circle of fire. And the people back then, they probably prayed they'd make it to morning. And so now here we are in 2021, and what's changed? Not a whole hell of a lot. We're still, now tonight, we're behind our screens, and we're safe and sound and hoping that better times are ahead. As far as the stories go tonight, I'd like to just give you a little cautionary note. Some of these are stories of adult themes, and there'll be some adult language. So forewarned is forearmed. It's not me that's going to be dropping the F-bombs. It's my characters. They're animals. I can't control them. They're just off the hook. So without further ado, I'd like to go into story number 1 for the evening. We're going to take the Kleinman time machine back 20 years. And when we join our protagonist, who's a provincial, out-of-borough puppy, he's in bad shape mentally. He's broken down. And against all odds, from where he grew up, going to a therapist was just verboten. You don't do that. But he decided he had to go. He found a tiny little lady that he derisively calls the world's littlest shrink. And things got better. And just when things got on the track, what do you think? Chaos ensued. Welcome to my last act, the last act of my story, called The Tape, which was originally published by Tom Beller's Mr. Beller's Neighborhood. And one thing I just want to explain before I get into this, and that is I always wanted to have the great singer La Lupe in one of my stories. And so in this one, I gave her a cameo. So here she is in the final reference in the section, and we reference one of my favorite of her songs. It's called Puro Teatro. And basically she says, after she's scorned and beaten and destroyed by the person she trusted, she says, "Lo tuyo es puro teatro," which basically means your whole thing is BS. So without further ado, the last scene in the tape. The seasons changed, the years passed, and my wife and I got our careers back on track, more or less. Our career trajectories had certainly flattened, though, as a new generation of go-getters flitted into my city. Brooklyn, once a low-cost alternative to Manhattan, was now expensive, but we pushed on. All the while, I continued with therapy and kept on shoveling. Eventually, I decided to tell my tiny therapist that I was fine. I didn't need to come any longer. I had several nifty rationalizations at the ready, but the reality, which I never expressed to my shrink, was that my opinion of our work together had, over time, reset to its default Tony Soprano, Dr. Melfi position. And you remember that. Whatever happened to Gary Cooper, the strong silent type? That was an American. He wasn't in touch with his feelings. He just did what he had to do. Are you sure? She said. We have a lot of work. I'm sure, I said, smiling. It's time for me to move on. She smiled and suggested we go forward to put a bow on things for another few weeks. And to this, I agreed. That weekend at the US Open tennis finals, Hewitt clobbered Sampras. The next Tuesday, I had a morning like any other morning. I walked my dog in Prospect Park. I went home. I fed and brushed the dog. I took a shower, had some coffee, prepared for work. Sirens screamed down Flatbush Avenue nonstop, just like those horrific crack-a-bye baby nights back in the mid-'80s. I figured there was a big fire in downtown Brooklyn, maybe around DeKalb. I remember thinking that hopefully it wasn't Junior's because they had the best cheesecake around. The telephone rang. It was my wife, already at work. Put on CNN right now, she screamed. It's Bin Laden, I just know it. Oh, what now, I thought. I reached for the remote in the bedroom and buttoned my shirt with the other hand. There, against the cloudless Colorado blue sky, the North Tower was on fire. A plane! My wife screamed into the phone. I thought, what kind of asshole flies into a building as big as the World Trade Center? I stood, transfixed, half-dressed, staring at the television and hearing my wife cry over the phone. Until the unthinkable happened for the second time that morning. I ran to pick up my son. There in the lobby of his school, he and his preteen friends trembled, cried, hugged, knowing some dads were done. He came running to me as I entered and wrapped his hands around me in a big bear hug. Where's Mom? He asked. She's fine, I said. She'll be home soon. In fact, she made it back only after an arduous walk home over the Brooklyn Bridge. Dad, let's go, please, now, he said, relieved that both his parents were safe. As we approached our apartment building, my son and I met Eddie, our super. Let's go to the penthouse, Eddie said. Wordlessly, the three of us whooshed up the freight elevator and walked onto the penthouse lady's wraparound deck. We stared in disbelief at the sight before us, numb to the ongoing wail of sirens from the emergency vehicles still racing down Flatbush and over the bridge to downtown Brooklyn, downtown Manhattan. Minutes later, the top of the South Tower seemed to disappear, as if in a controlled demolition. We stood silent, shaking, as the colossal structure collapsed into itself in a mushroom cloud of debris. Tears rolled down our faces as we held hands. This is my kid's crucible, I thought. My grandparents witnessed Cossacks setting their town afire. They were 13. My dad, he white-knuckled his way through the Battle of the Bulge. He was 19. And now here we were. My son standing witness to this violent haze of atomized humanity. It was as if an evil genie had swirled about the molten skyscrapers and naughtily undid their zippers. 2 days later, I called to confirm my therapy appointment. She asked how I was doing. Fine, I lied. She asked how my son and wife were. Fine, I lied again. She suggested maybe we should suspend our suspension of our work together. You know, she said softly, sometimes significant events such as this can churn up the chaos of the past. When that happens, it's important to, I'm fine, I yelled yet again. See you soon. In fact, I was in a state of stupefaction, numbness, disbelief, disconnection from life, as if I were a World War I doughboy stumbling blindly through a no man's land of emotion. I reeled through the hours, clinging blindly to some semblance of routine, the tolling of each passing hour a lifesaver, thrown upon the roiling emotional waters of those deadly days. I sat in my usual chair later that Thursday. She said nothing, neither did I. Instead, I looked out at the world's littlest shrink's office window. The Brooklyn air was yellow. It smelled like an acrid electrical fire with top notes of crematorium. Okay, I said finally, furiously fending off inner demons. I'll come for one more session, just one, and I'll prove to you I'm all right. She nodded. How are you going to prove that? I'll use music, I said, the idea just popping into my head as if from a jack-in-the-box. I'll make you a World Trade Center mixtape in sections for each of the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief. Explain. I leaned forward in my chair. I'll make a mixtape with songs that reflect denial and isolation, I said, and anger, and bargaining, depression, and acceptance in that order. Is that something you would like to do, she said, twiddling pencil between her elfin fingers. It's something I want to do, and something I should prove to you that I'm okay. She put the pencil down. That sounds wonderful. All that week I worked on the tape. I painstakingly selected songs suitable for each of the 5 sections. The floor of my living room was cluttered with CDs, albums, and tapes from operas, rock, folk, even movie soundtracks. Finally, it was finished. I held it aloft, unplayed, convinced it would provide incontrovertible proof that I was ready to be weaned off therapy. I proudly rang the loud ship's bell in front of the littlest shrink's office. I heard a soft footsteps and a metallic click of the medical lock. She opened the door and smiled. Before sitting down, I looked at each wall of the therapist's office one last time, and I admired her photos of Lake Como, Il Duomo di Firenze, the 1924 Alfa Romeo ad by Rene Magritte. I sat down and I patted my shirt pocket. I got it, I said, right here. She said nothing. I took the cassette out along with a folded sheet of loose leaf paper. It's all here. Nothing. Would you like to hear what's on the tape? Just some examples, I asked. If you'd like to tell me, sure. I unfolded the paper. Okay, just for example, under Denial and Isolation, I have Elusa Van La Stella, the Caruso version, with a segue to Suzanne Vega's Small Blue Thing. That made her smile. Tosca, she said, nice. Under Anger, I have Twisted Sister, We're Not Gonna Take It, with a segue to Ride of the Valkyries off the Apocalypse Now soundtrack. She nodded again. Under Bargaining, I have Buddy and Julie Miller doing Broken Things. Under Depression, I have Townes Van Zant's Flying Shoes, and I have Elton John's Come Down in Time. That's a nice one too, she said. I stood up and walked to the window. A group of little kids walked home after school. They laughed. Their banter was a bomb. What about acceptance? She asked. I folded the paper, wrapped it around the cassette, and put it back in my pocket. Puro Teatro by La Lupe, I said, still looking out the window. Very nice, she said. I turned to her. I think I'm good to go, I said unconvincingly. Think about it, she said. No pressure. I walked out the door and down to my car. The residents of Sunset Park were coming home from work, wearily walking up the hill from the subway. I noticed that now, among the working class men and women, there was a sprinkling of yuppies, cultural kudzu. I opened the Volkswagen's door, started the engine, took a deep breath, and pulled the tape from my pocket. I carefully inserted it into the cassette player and steeled myself for its worldwide debut, coming at the conclusion of my time in therapy. I pressed play. There was a mechanical whirring sound, but no music. Then a horrible gnashing sound as ribbons of my precious Kubler-Ross 911 tape crashed between rollers and heads, spewed from the stereo slot, slithered down the stick shift of my Volkswagen, and wound its way around my feet. The machine had eaten my tape, and I spontaneously convulsed in a torrent of tears, loud, uninhibited, as school kids passed, and must have stared with the careless curiosity of youth at the grief-stricken graybeard in the cocoon of his car as his ancient audio tape spooled forth, inextricably entangling him in a terrible 5-stage tomb of tunes. Thank you. Number 2. We're going to get back on my time machine and go back another 20 years to 1980. This story is called Mark Lipshitz's Dominant Handball Star Dies. And the narrator is a physician's assistant in a major Midtown hospital. By the time he was on his deathbed, Mark Lipschitz was a real pain in the ass. I hate Navy guys, he wheezed, that mild shirt sleeves December night. I remember it like yesterday, the 64-degree high, freaky for New York in early winter, the year I turned 29. I came to Mr. L's room with his dinner. It was late, and I was about to finish my shift. A black Bic lighter was next to a pack of Winstons right there on his tray. I just shook my head. Man, I give up with you. He smiled and then coughed until he was red in the face. It sounded loose, phlegmy, like pieces of lung got loose and rattled around his chest. He squinted his eyes in pain, but you couldn't get him to stop for no money in the world, the smoking or the bitching. And about the Navy, he knew damn well I was on the McKinley. Right after New Year's in '69, we made way for the Philippines. Now, the McKinley being a flagship meant we carried a rear admiral, but it was slow. Took us 8 days to get to Pearl and a lifetime to get to Da Nang, where right away we saw off to starboard the bloated body of one of our guys, a pilot, just floating there. I was 18 and this shit was real. But back to Mr. L. That night, I moved the cigarettes and put his dinner down on his tray, and right away he gives me the stink eye. Get that shit out of here, he grumbled. Mr. L, I said, that's a perfectly good veggie burrito. You need to keep your strength up if you want to get back onto the courts come this spring. Now, the word around the hospital, Mr. L had been the greatest handball player in history. Bear in mind, back in high school, up in the Bronx back in the day, me and my friends didn't play handball. I was all about hoops and baseball, first base. I didn't know nothing about handball. What I do know, though, is that to win in this life, you got to have an edge. Me, I could run, I could jump. Made our third baseman look good, leaping high for his throws. And hoops, I played solid D and just smacked those shots away. But with Mr. L, I'm told back in the day, he was a quick little guy, maybe 5'6", 140 or so, and I believe it. Hairy, though. Even at the end, chest, backs, legs, everywhere you look, thick, curly hair. His ears look like those crazy tufts of leaves and whatnot you see popping out of the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. But he was built. I give him that. Good muscle tone, even for an older guy. Had those old school black high-top kids he'd wear to rehab, along with these baggy gray sweatpants and a blue sweatshirt turned inside out, sleeves cut off. But the main thing, his edge, he was ambidextrous, see. He was as good with his left hand as his right. And he was sneaky with it, too. He told me once when we were drinking Hennessy and plastic water cups how he'd play with the opponent's head during a match. First, he'd make it look like a lucky shot with his left hand. Let the guy get some easy points, get on a roll. Then he'd drop the hammer. Killers from the left, killers from the right, cutters, spinners, jumpers, whips. I let him get a few points, he said. Then I just get rid of him. That last month was rough. Mr. L was in a lot of pain. It spread all over. His doctors tried to do right by him, keep him comfortable, but it was everywhere. Finally, they upped the dosage on his pain meds to the point where he was in and out. One time, just before, you know what I'm saying, I came by to check on him. It was late, I remember that much. Right away, I saw he was out. But as soon as I tiptoed in, his droopy old eyes creaked open. I never saw him look that way. I mean, the dude looked 20 years older. His whole face just sagged, and his eyes, it was like the light behind his eyes went from 100 to 40 watts. Give me that lighter, he said. Why don't you stop? I asked. Nothing, no response. And then he looked at me with a sadness in his face I'd never seen before in a human, but I've seen it in a dog. Like when they're done and they kind of know it, and one day they just skulk off into the woods to die alone, in peace, in dignity. At the time, I'd been there at Roosevelt Hospital a couple of years, and you hear the doctors talk, the pulmonary guys, the orthopedists, the cardiologists. You get a sense of things medical-wise, you know what I'm saying? And I would hear the psychiatrists too, and what the shrinks would say is, look at the patient, not where the patient is pointing. And here was a guy, man, who came up from nothing, I mean nothing, on the Brooklyn streets of Williamsburg during the Depression. He turned to handball like I took to hoops because it was the cheapest sport to play. All you needed was a ball. Mr. L, he took his dad's old winter gloves out of the closet and turned them inside out. Those were his handball gloves early on. He went to Eastern District High with guys like Red Auerbach. He practiced hard. He eventually won a national championship, went into the service, Marines. Survived World War II, barnstormed the company giving handball exhibitions and really made the sport popular during the 50s. In his world, he was a rock star. And then life happened. The bottle, 2 divorces, run-ins with the law, a gambling dispute with the wrong kind of guy. Eventually, he moved to Brighton Beach where he paid the rent hustling handball by the ocean on the crack courts out there by Levy Park. And now on that particular night, way back in 1980, there was a look in his eyes. Like I said, it was late when I came in with his dinner tray, and he started in on the Navy again. Come on, Mr. L, the game's almost over, I said, fluffing up his pillows. Monday Night Football was his thing, you know. He snorted. Dolphins, Patriots, they both stink on ice. Take the Patriots with the points. Down the hall, the nurses had an oldie station on because I could hear that twangy Beatles song, All My Lovin'. God, I hate the fucking Beatles, he said. He reached for the clicker, turned on the game, and upped the volume. Howard Cosell's nasal drone drowned the song out. Mr. L was right. The game was a stinker. You know, this was way before, you know, the Patriots got on their roll. He turns to me. Did I ever tell you I played Russian roulette? He asked, eyes on the game. It was late in the 4th quarter. No. I raised my eyebrows. This was a new one. Well, I did. Twice. In the service. I retired undefeated. Anything else you want to tell me? I said, as Russ Francis caught a 38-yard pass from Kavanaugh. Touchdown. Patriots were up 13-6. The score seemed to pick Mr. L up because out of nowhere he starts to tell me another story about his life back in the day. I ever tell you about the time I got arrested up in Monticello? I shook my head. It was the year I drove a Dugan's bakery truck upstate. The same year that song came out. He scratched his head. I remember seeing those mopes play that on Ed Sullivan. Then there was a commotion down the hall. A lot of screaming, crying. Doctors were being paged to come to the ER. There was a gunshot victim. Strange, I remember, because Monday nights was usually quiet. They found me parked behind Dafco at a sporting goods store there on Main Street, Mr. L said. I was asleep, dead drunk, behind the wheel of the truck. Dolphins tied it up. But the Patriots charged right back and got into field goal range as time wound down in regulation. But I think what pissed them off most was that I peeled the tops off of all the chocolate cupcakes. What did you do with them? He smiled a crooked smile. I fucking ate them. What do you think I did with them? The seconds ticked off the game clock. The Patriots' John Smith took his practice kick and trotted out along with the rest of the field goal unit. Close the fucking door already, Mr. L said. All that shrieking and crying out in the hallway is driving me nuts. As I closed the door, Cosell's voice suddenly got very low. Remember, this is just a football game, Cosell said. What the fuck, Mr. L shouted at the television. Just call the game, will you? But Cosell continued. An unspeakable tragedy confirmed to us by ABC News in New York City. John Lennon, outside his apartment building on the west side of New York, the most famous perhaps of all the Beatles, shot twice in the back, rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, dead on arrival. I looked at Mr. L. He looked back at me like he wanted me to explain. Hard to go back to the game after that news flash, Cosell said. Mr. L, one-time handball champion, got uncommonly quiet. Some fucking world we live in, he said, as a single tear rolled down his cheek. Some world. Mr. L's eyes closed. In this meaningless game, Smith's kick was blocked. Then the clock ran out, and it was overtime at the Orange Bowl. Thank you. Now, did you want to go to some questions or?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let's
great.
see. What I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna let everybody give people permission to unmute themselves, and let's see if we can get these questions in one at a time and not talk over each other. So anybody who wants to ask a question first, just go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead.
Go ahead.
I will make two comments. One is I would dispute the notion that Junior's is the best cheesecake because we have S&S here in the Bronx, and you will not get. And I actually once did a taste test, and S&S won hands down. So that's one. And the other one is I could definitely relate to how you described growing up in the Bronx as a boy in the Bronx, and what it was like in the schoolyards and what sports we played. As I said, if you read your work enough, you'll see yourself, and I certainly saw myself in those things.
Yeah, thanks, Gary.
Marty, I thought the one about 9/11 was awesome. I mean, really, it really totally, being in New York at that time, I totally felt that moment of shock and the sky looking that way. And I'll never forget how blue the sky was that day. And you did a great job of pulling that moment together. It was excellent. It was excellent. I loved it.
Thank you so much. You know, I think there's a whole generation of New Yorkers that have like terminal PTSD from that.
Oh yeah. Like every time a plane goes by, I still go like this. I mean, you know, and pulling my daughter out of school and, you know, driving back over. I had to drive back over the bridges and stuff to get her from Rockland County over to Westchester. And yeah, same thing. Awesome work.
Thank you.
Marty, you have a wonderful way of bringing together a private story and cosmic event. In both of those stories, that those two things sort of intersecting with each other is very powerful. I mean, suddenly the individual life is part of the bigger life in a very powerful way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the magic trick too, is to take the big event, and then if you personalize it and find the kernel of it, to me, it helps make it more powerful, because you're just dealing with, like, on a micro level, what's happening with one particular set of people, as opposed to a big panorama, which also is very hard to do. But in a short story, I think that's the way to do it. And I appreciate your comment. Thank you.
Hi, Marty. It's Ava. Sorry, I'm not on camera. I have to agree with Mr. Jeannie Drew. You know, we just came up on the 40th anniversary of John Lennon's murder, and I've been taking some online classes about John Lennon, and I've just been feeling very pensive about the whole situation. And your story really hit home. I know exactly, you know, I was a kid, but I remember exactly where I was when John Lennon was murdered. And I could tell you, you know, playing gin rummy at the kitchen table with my sister. And it just really, it hit home. And it was beautifully woven. And I felt really there in the hospital room with that gentleman. And my mother hated the Beatles too. And she even said, wow, what a tragedy. So I don't know. I'm just rambling. Thank you.
No, don't, you know, it's good to ramble. I'm going to ramble one sentence too, and that is, I remember I was in, we were living in Jackson Heights when that happened, and I was really upset, and so everybody was calling each other, and I just felt compelled I had to call my dad. Big mistake. I told him, I vented, and his attitude, and what he said was, I never thought he was any good. I'm like, right, got it. So that's the flip side. Anyone else? If not, I'll.
Hey, Marty.
Oh.
Hi, it's Annette.
Hello.
It's so wonderful to see you, Marty. And gosh, I as somebody who played handball and paddleball for many, many years, I just love that story. I could just see the guy, and the handball players were just like that. So it was terrific.
Right.
Thanks so much for sharing, and best of luck with everything. With the book is terrific.
Well, thanks so much for your help as well.
Thank you, Marty, for sharing these wonderful stories. I'm Bill Lawler from Lehman College, and we had classes with Terry D'Antonio, and we worked together at Bronx Community College and did tutoring and took a trip out to the National Poetry Festival together. So wonderful to hear you take these impossible tasks in literature, writing something about 9/11, writing something about the death of John Lennon, and doing it so well, showing what other writers can't do, and you do it with excellence. Thanks so very much.
Well, thanks so much for your comments. I greatly appreciate it. I'd like to get into the final segment for tonight. Now we're going to go in the time machine, but we're going to go forward in time to 2012. You know what's really weird? The notion of hope. I like to think, I imagine sometimes that like a Martian would look down at us humans and say, oh, isn't that adorable? They actually have this thing called hope. Like no matter what is going bad, they cling to this notion that things are going to get better when everybody knows that outcomes are not always favorable. Back in 2012, hope was absent because many believed that December 12th, 2012 was going to be the very last day. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a big thing. And the apocalypse was coming. And so this last piece is the final scene of my story called To Bake Barekas. And it's my take on how that last day of Earth might play out. But I want to leave you with a sense of hope. So as strange as that might sound. So when we meet our protagonist, whose name is Gina, she's just driven in a howling blizzard from Astoria to her childhood apartment in Brooklyn. And all the while, she's thinking back to the myriad random tragedies that she and her family endured. And now she's looking forward to a final reunion with her mom, whose name is Ellie. And just as a point of reference, what the hell is burekas? It's a savory stuffed hand pie. It's popular with Sephardim and it's very popular throughout the Middle East. They're very tasty. Try it. But this is the last sequence of To Bake Burekas. The managing agent had taped copies of a memo around the perimeter of the marble apartment house lobby. Gina reads it. The doorman is not on duty, it says. The laundry room is locked. The co-op's remaining shareholders are to make sure the door is safely closed upon entering and leaving the building. Good luck to everyone, the managing agent, a burned-out blonde named Sarah Klein, wrote. 2 of the 6 lights in the elevator cab are out. Gina gets off on the 8th floor and knocks lightly on the apartment door before ringing the bell, even though she still has her key. From within, Gina hears her mother shuffle to the door. Give me a minute, just a second, Ellie says. She opens the door and smiles warmly at the sight of her daughter. The two embrace, rocking and holding each other close. Ellie pulls back and raises a forefinger. You've been smoking, Ellie says. Aha! You can't fool your mother. It seems to Gina that every time she visits, the old person smell, that mixture of mothballs and staleness that comes from perpetually shut windows, gets more concentrated. As she walks down the hall, Gina also notes the apartment's advanced state of disrepair. Pictures lining the walls are crooked and dusty, carpeting is unvacuumed, windows are dirty, plates of uneaten food are strewn about on the coffee table, along with the covered depression glass candy plate full of Gina's childhood favorite, the ubiquitous chocolate-covered jelly rings. The shades are drawn, the lights are off, as usual. Gina walks around the living room and starts snapping on lights. Let's get some life in this place, Gina says. Why burn the electricity, Ellie says. I'm only one person. Gina walks to the west-facing window and pulls back the heavy fabric drapes. The snow still swirls, and from the 8th floor perspective, it's now clear that the orange orb is far lower in the horizon. She gasps and shuts the drapes. Of course, Ellie smiles. Who needs to look on that? Gina turns on the television and expertly toggles the remote. All regular programming is suspended. She finds instead a Honeymooners marathon, a Three Stooges marathon, a Twilight Zone marathon, a Flintstones marathon, a Julia and Jacques cooking at home marathon. She turns on Fox, which she loathes, and finds an NFL Classic Games marathon. The voice of the NFL Films John Facenda resonates through the cheap television speaker. Pro football is a game, not war, Facenda intones, like a voice from the Mount, as grainy images of gridiron greats flicker on Ellie's boxy old Magnavox. It's for win or lose, not life or death. Gina shuts the TV off. Ah, Misha Gas, Ellie says, but your father, may he rest in peace, loved his football. She turns toward the kitchen ahead of her daughter. Come, Gina, let's bake our burekas. When Gina was a young girl, she and Ellie always seemed to find peace in that Brooklyn kitchen. It was an easy alliance between mother, a Sephardic Jew, and daughter. Ellie lovingly taught her daughter, passing along the skills and recipes that filtered from medieval Spain, flowing through the Balkans, Greece, Turkey, Israel, North Africa, who knows where else. And Gina always gratefully accepted the gifts of her mother, and especially the ability to cook the food that communicated pure, unconditional love to family and friends. Here in this old kitchen, there was never emotional or generational rift, only the silken transfer of life's baton, and 2 noses white with flour. Ellie turns the oven to 350. Gina pulls her iPad from a backpack and sets it atop the fridge. With the television off, they can hear the wind outside. The air is so cold, so clear, that from the distant mosque in Borum Hill, she hears the call to prayer. Ah, that reminds me, Ellie says. She opens a box of diamond wooden safety matches and turns to her brass menorah. Come, she says to Gina, we'll say the Baracha. It is the 5th night of Hanukkah, a holiday that celebrates human survival, victory, and miracles against all odds. We'll do the first one, since you weren't here, Ellie says. The 2 chant. Ellie lights the match, touches it to the single center candle, and then uses it to light the others. Gina blows out the match. Her mother smiles. Gina and Ellie arrange their mise en place with their bowls, implements, and ingredients, the phyllo dough, the feta cheese, the eggs, salt, pepper, sesame seeds, and canola oil. Gina fusses with the music on her iPad, finally selecting a song called La Serena. It is sung by an Iranian girl named Azam Ali, and her tremulous vocals drip with mysticism and communicate a worldly wisdom. It's a performance that flings wide a window onto a fury of human emotion, a yawning chasm of the unknown. Ellie looks up quizzically. Oh my God, she says, I think I know that song from when I was a girl, but no one sang it quite like that. You know La Serena? Gina says. She casually pulls a fatty from her purse and lights it. Her mother looks at her disapprovingly, and then she reaches out her hand. You know, what the hell? Let me try that stuff, she says, and she inhales deeply. Gina looks at her mom, lost in a blue-black cloud of super skunk, and she laughs. What? Ellie says. You think I was never a wild child? You think I was a Miss Goody Two-Shoes? Gina takes a hit, puts the joint down, and gets a big bowl that she fills with cool water for working the phyllo dough. You know what that song means, Ellie says. Gina shakes her head. No, I just know that I love it. She takes another hit. She exhales and passes it back to her mother. Once upon a time, you know, in Spain, the Jews and the Muslims got along great. Sure, said Gina, and then the Inquisition. So smart, my daughter, Kenahara, poo, poo, poo. Ellie spits out the ancient phrase designed to ward off the evil eye. So anyway, Gina prompts, right. Anyway, hey, Gavalt, this marijuana is strong, Ellie says. Anyway, the song is in Ladino, a mixture of Spanish and Hebrew with accents from throughout the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Gina interrupts laughing. And it means, right, and it means, what does it mean already? I'm verschimmeled. Right, it means, she shakes her head. Basically, it's a woman sitting by her window in a tower facing the sea. She longs for her loved one who is gone at sea, and she sings, if the sea was milk, I would be a fisherman. I would fish for my sorrows with words of love. Give me your hand, my dove, then something, something, something. Then unlucky are you that sleep alone. I am coming to sleep with you. Gina cracks the eggs and whisks them in the big bowl while Ellie expertly works the phyllo dough with her fingertips. Pretty hot stuff, Mom, Gina says as her iPod shuffles to the arena rock favorite, Journey's Lights. Steve Perry's voice is a reprise of the melancholy in the Azam Ali Ladino tune. And maybe it was the pot, but more likely it was their lifetime of shared experience that as the now blood-red orb finally dips below the horizon out of their sight, thanks to Ellie's tightly closed drapery, causes the mother and daughter to stop their work and stare at each other. Their eyes are now moist with tears. Gina puts the whisk down, holds her mother tightly, and kisses her cheek. Mommy, she gasps. Oh, Mommy, I love you so much. The two clutch each other. The moment is broken by the oven timer, which peeps that the temperature is now at 350. Gina sniffs and changes the subject. How many barekas should we make, she asks, wiping her eyes as she pulls 3 baking sheets from a cupboard. Ellie replies, without hesitation, we'll triple the recipe. We'll eat some tonight. We'll freeze the rest. Everybody loves my barekas. No, this way we'll have
Congratulations.
Thank you. Very enjoyable. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Fabulous story. Thank you.
That was great.
Fabulous story.
Thank you, Marty. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
We really enjoyed
Nice
it.
to see you.
All of them.
Congratulations, Marty.
Oh, thanks, Judith.
Congratulations, Marty. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and thank you so much for Marty Kleinman.
Thank you, Marty. It was a pleasure to see you and hear you read. Always a pleasure. Have a happy and healthy New Year. This is Nancy and Byron here in Mexico. We were really happy to hear your evocative story. Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Thanks for coming. Hope you didn't hit traffic.
Drive safe, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, good night, everyone.
Bye, Ronnie.